Hello, welcome to the stream. Sorry, sent a message. There we go, that's dealt with. Anyway, big ups, welcome to the stream. Now, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how you're feeling after that performance. I thought it was very good. I thought it was very promising. I saw a lot of good things in that game. And overall, I was very happy. Palermo, I was very impressed with them, to be honest. I thought Palermo actually did a decent job against us. Against a team that was obviously better than us, better than them. They created chances. They did what they could, really. They played their way. And on another day, it might pay off. Like, they had some chances that they probably think they should have scored. But overall, very, very impressive win from us. But so many good highlights to speak about today. There's so many great performances to touch on. And so we'll share my screen with, I believe this is the one we want to have a look at. Oh, no, that's the second half. There we go. This is the first half. Now then, we're doing two different sets of player ratings because I find it too difficult to, it's hard to, do it just for the first 11 when basically two different teams played both halves. Haaland played a little longer than the rest of his of the first half team. But overall, he still didn't play that much longer. So we'll start with this one. James Trafford, I thought he didn't really get tested too hard. Had a slip up on the ball early on. But overall, I thought he had a couple collects. Safe hands every time he got on the ball. Don't feel like he had any spills or whatnot. So you know what? I'm going to give a generous 6.5. I actually thought he was pretty solid. It's a performance that he himself can be very happy with. Rico, I actually thought was pretty solid today. He wasn't challenged much on the flank, but going forward, he was solid. He was looking at play, and overall, I just thought he was pretty good. John Stones, I put in there as well. Important to note, Rico, he got an assist. John Stones, I'm also giving a 7 because this guy needed minutes, and thankfully, it doesn't look like he's gone injured. To my knowledge, touch wood. Doesn't look like he's gone injured. He completed 45 minutes of football, which is important. We can just get this guy back up to full match fitness. Get him into the best capable state he can be in. Hopefully, it's going to prevent as many injuries as possible, but we can't rush him back. We have to be careful with him. We know that much. He's made of glass, and he's absolutely brilliant, and we've got to take care of him. Now, Kusanov, I'm actually giving 7.5. He had a really good moment where he cut off the counter, but overall, I just thought he looked so much more embedded into the team. A lot of people look at the Chelsea game, and it tends to be what he's remembered for, sadly, so far at City. His struggles in that Chelsea game. And in that Chelsea game, he really did look like he was struggling a little bit to get into the team, really bed himself in. This time around, though, he looked so much more comfortable. Really looked like he knew his place, knew his job. And I feel like that pace and that aggression was really on show in blips today. He didn't need to be too aggressive because, again, Palermo, despite having a good few chances out on us, didn't have tons of the ball and didn't get forward an awful lot. So his work wasn't really in the high. So I'll give him a 7.5 just. Blinkenack, you lost me there, didn't you? Now let's repost this one. Oh, Blinkenack, it's the second half again. But yeah, wrapping up on Kusanov, I thought he was very solid and performance to be proud of. Now then, with Reijnders, didn't really get in the game too much. He had a couple of really good dribbles, but again, I don't really feel like he had too much to do. Definitely less than the others. So I'm going to give him 6.5. I guess 6.5 doesn't mean he was bad or anything like that. Just means that his work wasn't as high as others who were. O'Reilly, I'm going to give similar. I actually thought he was very impressive. If I give him like 6 points, I'll give him a 6.7. In fact, because I feel like he needs to be in that middle ground. Because I did think he was relatively solid. There just wasn't an awful lot for him to do, if you get me. So I think a six. I don't give 6 point anything different from 6.5 and sixes match, but on this rare occasion, I'll give him a 6.7. Nico Gonzalez, I'll give a 7. I actually was very solid. This performance on Pep um, will still be unhappy with him and still have question marks on whether he should play him or not. I'm not saying that he needs to be our number one starting DM, but he's certainly good enough to be an option. He's certainly good enough to fill in for Rodri, for a couple of games, especially if he's got a man next to him. I'm certainly happy with that. Marmoush, I'm going to give a 6. I think it was more the system that let Marmoush down a little bit today. Just didn't really look like he got to do much. 9, he wasn't bad by no means, but I think he just struggled to get into the game a little bit. Did have some good moments when he played the ball across to Haaland. But overall did struggle a little bit to get into the game. So I'll give him a 6, but by no means bad. He's a very good footballer, Marmoush, and I'm so excited to see him cook this season. Bob and Shirky were my personal first half man of the matches, so we're going to get on to them last. Haaland, other than the goal he got and a couple other moments here and there, he was fine. I'll give him a 7.5 because I did think his performance was better than certain others. So, actually, no, I think a 7's fine for Haaland. He got his goal, and overall, he was just solid. And I think I'm going to give Bob a 7.5. I think Bob was very, very impressive. Sorry, just had a message. I think Bob was very, very impressive today. For a player that broke his leg, basically, and was out for the whole season, really, last season. Hardly got a minute. I don't even think he played a minute, other than the Community Shield. He really looked brilliant today. He looked so sharp, so ready. He looked so fresh. And apparently he's been impressing Pep, and he just impressed me tonight. I was so, so happy with him. Sorry, I've just got to respond to this message. Sorry, I just had to respond to that there. Big up someone who's tuned in so far, by the way. I do appreciate it. And my first half man of match, I just edged it here slightly. I do think Bob's ever so slightly above Kusanov, by the way. And I'm giving Shirky, I feel, an 8. I just feel like he was everywhere today. Blinking at 98. I just feel like he was everywhere today. He was just everywhere in that first half. I saw him pinging balls to left and right. And more importantly, he was really trying things. He played a really nice ball into Marmoush. It doesn't quite find him. It's just ever so slightly out of his reach. But he gave it a go. It's a difficult ball to find. Some players won't try on those balls. That was a KDB trait. I'm not trying to compare him to KDB or anything, but KDB, the great thing was with him is that he would try out passes that other players wouldn't, and it got him so much joy in terms of assists. And for Shirky, a player that finished last season with 20 assists or something like that, it's not all that surprising to see that he would try out the more dangerous passes and whatnot, the passes that probably do require a higher skill gap, because because he knows in his head if he can pull off that ball, then a good goal scoring opportunity is on the way. And he did it against Al Hilal. That ball to Phil Foden, no one else saw that. No one else would see that on the field. I know I didn't see it. And yet he found it, and Phil Foden's run was brilliant as well. It was such a brilliant goal. And so I was very, very happy. And Shirky, he's showing signs for me of a great, great footballer. Him as Bob for me with the highlights, with an honourable mention of Kusanov in there as well. Now then, let's jump on to the second half 11. Starting with Eddie. Had a little scary moment at the end with Ruben Diaz, but overall I thought he was fine. I give him a 6, I didn't think he didn't really get tested at all. Had a good claim here and there. Very scary at the end, but overall fine. Nunes, I'll give a 6 as well. Again, I thought Nunes was fine. It was nothing in particular. It's like he wasn't like setting the model right back. But for me, that's kind of right back Nunes is going to be. He's always just going to be that like bog standard. I did a decent job today, kind of fullback for me. If he does better than that, then brilliant. I'm absolutely up for that. But I feel like Nunes is just going to be that right back that does a decent job every week. Sometimes it'll be a pretty good job. Sometimes you might have a Bozo moment and we'll look back on it frowning. But overall, I thought Nunes was fine. Now, it's important to mention Palermo weren't going as ham this half. And despite having some decent chances, they weren't going as big this half. And we were very much passing around the ball, just sticking in control, which is important to mention. Akanji... Again, I can't really remember him doing anything really that much. I'll give Diaz a 6.5 because he helped out Eddie a bit on that scary moment at the end, and did have that block shot. And overall, I thought defensively he just wasn't too bad. And Nathan Ake, I'll give 6.5 as well. He's really pressing up the field a bit, and just trying to cause unease for anyone that got in the way and whatnot. So I was fine with Ake. Ake did his job, I feel, and it was so good to see him back on the field too. Again, another player that we got to manage the minutes of. Just keep an eye on them, because last thing we want is them getting harmed in any way. Gundo, I think I'll give him a 6.5 too. I'll give Bernardo a 6. They were fine in the pivot. Bernardo, a couple misplaced passes here and there, but other than that, it was fine. I thought they did fine. Now, Savinho played a crucial part in creating the final goal of the match. He did play a big part in that, and he also got an assist, so helped create 2 goals, but he really should have had a goal himself. So for that, I'm going to give him a 7. It would have been 7.5 if he could have finished that chance off, though. But overall, he got an assist and basically assisted Mukasa's assist for Reijnders' second. Hopping on to the opposite flank, I'm going to give Doku give him a 6. He didn't really get many opportunities to bomb up field. So, the ratings are going to be a lot more timid for this half because, again, the first half was when we were really trying to like show off a bit, trying to show our colours, trying to play our way a lot. And in the second half, it was a lot more calm. It was a lot more passing it about, especially when we do have some of the older players on, it is going to be a bit more of that. But that's not to say we were bad or anything like that. Mukasa didn't get tons of action on the ball, got the least amount of minutes of everyone, that being half an hour. But I'll give him a 6.5, got an assist, and overall his movement was very solid. And you know what, Reijnders, I think I'm actually going to give Reijnders a 9. For the 45 minutes he played. I know it's a huge gulf in terms of the gap between others. I'm going to boost Savinho to a 7.5. I think it could have been an 8. I think Reijnders was just superb. Those box crashing runs, just bombing in out of nowhere, and just causing issues. He could have had a hat trick. No, he should have had a hat trick. He had 4 shots that half. All were big chances, and at the end he rounds the keeper, but just a touch and takes it away from him. and he missed the opportunity. He should have had a hat trick, really. Reijnders. But overall, I thought I think he's absolutely superb. I think we've got an absolute bargain getting this guy for under 50 million. With slightly more than Calvin Phillips in terms of price. Everything about this was absolutely brilliant from Reijnders. He was the absolute star of the show for me in that second half, and to an extent of the entire match. I said it. I've said it before that I think he's going to be our top best signing this summer, and that's not to say Shirky or Ainari and whatnot won't be. But I just think Reijnders is going to be superb. I think he's going to transform us to some extent in that midfield, and I'm so excited to see what else he can provide. He looks an absolute top player, and again, I think we've got ourselves an absolute bargain here. Such brilliant talent has been added to our squad. Now, this was the overall stats in terms of possession and whatnot. Now, Palermo did decent in terms of chance creation. They probably should have had a goal. They had a pretty good opportunity at one point, so they probably should have had a goal, but they just couldn't score it. On another day, though, it's probably a 3-1 win here. Although saying that, Reijnders and Savinho should have had another goal for us, so it could have been 5-1. But hey-ho. Possession, we were dominant as usual. Passing, again, dominant. Passing accuracy of 90. 10 fouls to 13. No yellows. Good stuff. No offsides. And 3 corners for us. Palermo had more. But again, overall, a brilliant performance from us. And I was so happy with it, Blues. Now then, it is late and I am tired. So I'm gonna call this stream a bit short. I appreciate the support, though, as per usual. This was a great way to start the season. It was absolutely brilliant. So for me, top performance from us all around the board, especially certain players. They are absolutely brilliant. Reijnders, Shirky, Bob, and Kusano for me were my 4 stars. Throw in Savinho too, because why not? I think Savinho is very good. A quick drink. And I really hope those 5 are, or at least those first 4 I mentioned, are heavily involved this season. I've said a lot that I want Kusanov in the defence a lot more. I've obviously expressed that I want Shirky and Reijnders in the team a lot. And I think that Oscar Bob is an absolute top talent. So unlucky last season, and I really hope that this season is his season, because it should have been last season, but it wasn't, sadly. But I'm really hoping that's this season. Anyway, thank you all Blues for the support. Over 500, about almost 500 views on the watch along, which is huge. So it's good to be back. I'm happy to be back, and I'm so excited for the Premier League to be back. Content coming this week ahead of the Premier League, so don't worry about that. Hoping to get something out for tomorrow, but don't count on it. We'll have to wait and see. Big ups to you all Blues, and I'll see you all in the next one.